When wildlife rescue volunteers stumbled upon a wounded Mustang stallion lying motionless in a secluded Colorado canyon, they assumed it was a routine injury call. But the powerful horse refused to budge, even though he was clearly in pain. Every attempt to approach him was met with fierce defiance. It wasn't until they uncovered what he was shielding beneath his enormous body that they realized this wasn't just an injury. It was one of the most extraordinary acts of interspecies protection ever recorded. This story will upend everything. You think you know about animal awareness, protective instincts, and the unimaginable lengths love will go to defend the vulnerable. The call came in to Wild Heart Rescue at exactly 6:47 a.m. on a brisk October morning. A hiker had reported what looked like a dying Mustang stallion in Copper Canyon, about 30 miles outside Denver. The animal hadn't moved in over 12 hours, and vultures had begun circling above. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the rescue's lead veterinarian, didn't hesitate. Elena was in her early 40s, small in stature but driven by a force of will that made her the backbone of the team. Her practical ponytail and observant brown eyes were trademarks of someone who had spent her life saving animals most people would give up on. With her were Marcus Chen, a seasoned large animal expert with 15 years of experience handling distressed horses, and Sarah Williams, a young but gifted vet tech known for her ability to soothe even the most panicked creature they packed their mobile veterinary unit with emergency gear and headed deep into Colorado's rugged backcountry. Copper Canyon was wild, both in beauty and danger. Home to untamed Mustangs, the terrain was unforgiving, strewn with sharp rocks, hidden ravines, and sudden drop-offs that could maim even the surest-footed animal. As the truck rattled over the uneven road, Elena couldn't shake the unease curling in her gut. When they finally laid eyes on the stallion, the sight stole Elena's breath. Even grounded, he was magnificent. His bay coat shimmered in the morning sun, and his black mane spilled across the rock like dark silk. Easily 16 hands tall and weighing close to 200 pounds, he was a giant. But something was off. He was lying in an oddly curled position, his massive body curved protectively around something unseen. His head was lifted, alert, and his eyes, sharp and unwavering, locked on them not with fear but with warning. "That's not how a dying horse looks," Marcus murmured as they unpacked their gear. "He's guarding something." Sarah reached for the tranquilizer rifle, but Elena stopped her with a gesture. "Hold on, let's watch first. Something about this isn't right." As they observed from a safe distance, the stallion's actions only deepened the mystery. Every few minutes he would lower his great head as if to check on something beneath him. His breath came in strained puffs, and they could see dried blood staining his left shoulder. Yet his eyes were clear, focused. When a raven fluttered down nearby, the stallion reacted instantly. Ears flat, teeth bared, and a furious neigh that sent the bird scrambling skyward. Whatever he was shielding, he was ready to fight for it. "I've never seen this kind of behavior," Elena whispered. "He's wounded. Look at the blood, the way he's guarding his side. But he won't run. Wild horses don't stay in place when they're hurt. They flee." Marcus lifted his binoculars, squinting to peer beneath the stallion. "There's definitely something there. I can't make it out, but it's alive. It moved." Elena's pulse quickened. In 2 decades of animal rescue, she'd seen horses defend their foals. But this stallion seemed to be protecting something far too small to be a horse. The way his body arched created a perfect shield, like a living barricade. "We need to get closer," Elena said firmly. "But slowly. If he's guarding something and wounded, he'll see us as a threat." As the team edged forward, the stallion never took his eyes off them. His message was unmistakable. He wasn't going anywhere, and neither was whatever he was guarding. What they were about to uncover would redefine their understanding of animal loyalty forever. As the team inched closer, the stallion's protective stance intensified. Muscles rippled beneath his gleaming coat, and his ears stayed pinned flat. Despite his injuries, there was nothing weak about him. He looked every bit the warrior, ready to defend at all costs. Elena stepped forward, palms open, her voice low and calming, a skill honed over years in the field. Easy, sweetheart. We're here to help. We see you're hurt. The stallion shifted slightly, tightening his body around what lay beneath. The movement drew a pained grunt from deep in his chest, and fresh blood trickled from the wound on his shoulder. Still, he refused to yield. "Dr. Rodriguez," Sarah whispered, urgency creeping into her voice. "Look at his left foreleg." Elena turned her focus and felt her stomach tighten. What she saw made her heart sink. The injury was far more severe than they'd initially assumed. Deep gashes stretched across the stallion's shoulder and upper leg, as if he'd collided with something sharp or fallen onto jagged rock. The wounds looked at least a day old, and the first signs of infection were beginning to show. "He needs immediate care," Marcus said quietly. "These wounds are serious. If the infection spreads, we could lose him." Yet the stallion seemed completely unaware of his own danger. Every ounce of his attention remained locked on protecting whatever lay beneath his powerful frame. Every few minutes, he would lower his head and emit low, soothing sounds, an astonishing contrast to the fierce warning he'd given the humans just moments earlier. That quiet tenderness told Elena everything she needed to know. She made a decision that went against every rule in her field guide. "I'm going to try to get close enough to see what he's protecting," she said. "If we can understand what's motivating him, maybe we can find a way to help them both." "Elena, that's risky," Marcus warned. "He's a wild stallion in pain. If he feels cornered—" "I understand the risk," Elena said, already stepping forward. "But look at him, Marcus. This isn't instinct, it's intentional. He's making a choice to stay here and endure pain instead of running. Whatever he's protecting, it matters more to him than his own survival." Elena crept closer, closing the gap to just 10 feet. That's when the stallion issued his final warning, rearing up slightly on his hind legs, hooves slashing the air. The display, while powerful, caused visible pain, but in that moment, as his chest lifted from the ground, Elena finally saw what he was shielding. She stopped in her tracks, a gasp catching in her throat. "Oh my God," she whispered. "What is it?" Sarah called from behind her. But Elena couldn't speak right away. What she had seen went against everything she knew about wild Mustangs. Nestled beneath the stallion's massive chest wasn't a foal. It wasn't even another horse. It was something entirely unexpected. "Marcus, bring the telephoto lens," Elena said urgently. "We need visual proof. No one's going to believe this." The stallion settled back down, curling his body once more around the small figure. But Elena had already seen enough. Her mind spun as she tried to make sense of it all. The stallion wasn't just lying injured in a canyon. He was choosing to stay, choosing to protect. "Elena, what did you see?" Marcus asked as he rushed forward with the camera. "A baby," she whispered. "But not a foal. Marcus, there's a human infant under that stallion." The words hit like thunder. Sarah gasped. Marcus froze, nearly dropping the camera. "That's not possible," he said. "How could a wild Mustang, why would he?" But the truth was undeniable. The stallion's behavior suddenly made perfect sense. He wasn't guarding territory or a food source. He was guarding a helpless child, and he was ready to sacrifice everything to keep that baby safe. Tears welled in Elena's eyes as the reality settled in. Somewhere a family was likely frantic with worry, searching for a missing child. And here, in the middle of nowhere, a wild stallion had found that child, and chosen to protect it with everything he had. But now, the situation became even more urgent. They had to save the stallion's life, secure the infant's safety, and somehow earn the trust of a wounded wild horse willing to die for something not of his own kind. Elena's thoughts raced. A wild Mustang, battered and bleeding, had taken on the role of protector to a human baby. The questions were overwhelming. How had the child ended up here? How long had the stallion been standing guard? Was the baby even still alive? "Sarah, call 911, Elena ordered sharply. "We need medical personnel, child services, and probably the sheriff. Tell them we've got an infant in critical condition." Sarah's hands trembled as she pulled out the satellite phone. "What do I even say?" she asked, voice shaking. Tell them the truth, Elena said. Let them decide if they believe. Marcus, meanwhile, had already begun snapping photos with the long lens, images that would soon become part of one of Colorado's most astonishing cases. Elena, he said, holding out the camera, look at this. The screen lit up with an image. The image on the camera confirmed what Elena had seen moments earlier. A tiny bundle wrapped in a pink blanket, nestled securely beneath the stallion's broad chest. The baby appeared to be moving, a promising sign that it was still alive, though its condition after possibly days in the wilderness remained uncertain. The blanket looks clean, Elena noted. And look at how the stallion's positioned himself. He's shielding the baby from wind and rain. His body forms a perfect shelter. The urgency in the air seemed to resonate with the stallion. His ears twitched constantly, pivoting between the rescue team and the distant rumble of helicopter rotors. When the Flight for Life helicopter crested the canyon rim, the stallion's response was swift and intense. With a desperate surge, he fought his way to his feet. His injured leg buckled beneath him, but sheer determination kept him upright. He stood over the child like a living barrier, his large frame bracing against the violent downwash of the spinning blades. Pain rippled through his body, but he held firm, resolute and unflinching even in the face of this roaring metal intruder. He's incredible, Sarah murmured. He doesn't know what that machine is, but he knows it might hurt. The baby. Elena felt an overwhelming wave of respect. The stallion's pain was undeniable, his strength fading, but his courage was unshaken. Still, time was running out. His injuries were worsening, and the child's fragile life hung in the balance. The helicopter touched down in a clearing roughly 100 yards away. Medical personnel quickly emerged, hauling gear as they rushed toward the scene. Dr. James Mitchell, the emergency physician, approached Elena with raised eyebrows and a skeptical tone. Your dispatch said a horse is guarding a baby? Hifaichu asked. That sounds implausible. I know, Elena replied, cutting him off, but you need to see it for yourself. Dr. Mitchell lifted his binoculars and scanned the canyon floor. Elena watched his expression shift, from disbelief to shock to urgent focus. Dear God, he muttered. There really is a baby under that horse. Do we know how long it's been there? At least 12 hours, Elena answered. But it could be longer. We have no idea how dehydrated, hypothermic, or malnourished the child might be. We need to reach the infant immediately, Dr. Mitchell said, stepping forward, but Elena caught his arm. Doctor, wait. That stallion is wild, he's in pain, and he believes he's protecting the baby. If you move in too fast, he could panic. He might hurt the child accidentally, or deliberately strike to defend it. For a moment, the team stood locked in a delicate standoff, frozen by the weight of the situation. More responders began to arrive. Deputies, Child Protective Services, additional vet staff, forming a widening circle around the wounded guardian and the tiny life he protected. Yet the stallion refused to yield. He stood tall, bloodied but unbroken. Then Marcus saw it. Elena, look at his breathing. She turned and saw the signs. The stallion's ribs expanded with effort, and his head hung lower than before. The constant stress, the blood loss, and his unrelenting effort to remain upright were finally catching up with him. He's slipping into shock, Elena said, her voice tight with urgency. If he collapses... She didn't finish the sentence. The weight of his body could crush the very life he'd fought so hard to protect. They were moments away from disaster. Elena made a decision, one that might save them both, or destroy her career. I'm going in, she said. Sarah, have the tranquilizer ready, but use it only if I give the word. Marcus, be prepared to move the second I clear the area. She took a deep breath and began her slow, deliberate walk toward the most dangerous rescue she'd ever attempted. Every movement was calm, measured. Years of experience reading animal behavior guided her. She kept her body low, her hands visible, her voice soft and steady. The stallion watched her approach with eyes that shimmered, not just with fear or fatigue, but with something deeper. Something that looked an awful lot like trust, described only as desperate hope. "Easy, beautiful boy," Elena murmured, her voice barely louder than the wind. "I know you're guarding something precious. I'm here to help, not harm." At about 15 feet away, the stallion gave another warning, a deep, resonant rumble that vibrated through his chest. But this time, Elena heard something new. Between the low growls aimed at her, he made softer, almost melodic sounds directed downward. "He's talking to the baby," she breathed in awe. "He's comforting her." Dr. Mitchell, observing from the medical staging area with binoculars, relayed into his radio. "The horse is displaying protective, almost parental behavior toward the infant. This is completely unprecedented." Elena continued forward inch by inch until she was 10 feet away. Then she made a calculated move. She knelt on the rocky earth, lowering herself both physically and symbolically. The reaction was immediate. The stallion's ears flicked forward and his rigid stance softened just slightly. "That's it," Elena cooed. "You know I'm not here to hurt your baby, don't you?" The word baby seemed to resonate with him. His breathing eased and he lowered his head to nuzzle the child protectively. In that moment, Elena got her clearest look yet at what lay under him. A baby girl, maybe 6 months old, wrapped in a pink blanket that was dusty but largely intact. The child shifted gently, proving she was still alive, but the signs of dehydration and exposure were unmistakable. Tiny fingers clutched the fabric, and dark wisps of hair peeked out from the blanket. "Elena to Mitchell," she said quietly into her radio. "Infant appears to be approximately 6 months old, responsive but showing clear signs of dehydration. We need to move quickly." She continued to approach slowly and steadily, her voice a constant soothing thread. "You've done such a good job keeping her safe," she told the stallion. "But she needs help you can't give. Let us help you both." When she was just 5 feet away, the stallion did something that no one watching could have predicted. Rather than run or lash out, he lowered himself gently to the ground, not collapsing but repositioning in a way that still protected the baby while giving Elena full access. Her breath caught in her throat. Now, she could see everything. The baby girl's large, solemn eyes met Elena's with startling clarity. Despite her condition, the child focused on Elena's face, and then, to everyone's shock, she smiled. It was faint and fleeting but unmistakable. A smile of recognition, of trust. "Hello, sweetheart," Elena whispered. "We're going to get you out of here." The stallion watched intently, eyes flicking from the baby to Elena. He lowered his head and let out another series of gentle sounds, the same ones Elena had heard all morning. "He's telling her I'm safe," she realized. "He's giving me permission." Slowly, carefully, Elena reached toward the baby. The stallion remained still. His massive head hovered near, watching every motion, but he didn't interfere. Elena's hands found the baby warm, amazingly warm. The stallion's body heat had shielded her from hypothermia, but she was weak. Her small heart thudded rapidly under Elena's fingers and her skin was dry with dehydration. Elena cradled her gently, lifting her from the hollow the stallion had formed. "I've got her," she called over her shoulder. "Alive and responsive, but she needs immediate medical care." As Elena turned with the child in her arms, the stallion stirred again. He rose with a visible effort, his wounded leg trembling beneath him, but sheer will kept him upright. Step for step, he followed Elena, never allowing more than a few feet between himself and the child he had risked everything to protect. At the edge of the clearing, Dr. Mitchell took the infant from Elena's arms and began his evaluation. "Dehydrated. Likely hasn't had food or fluids in at least 12 hours, he said. "But her vitals are stronger than I expected. This horse may have saved her life." As the medical team gathered around the infant, Elena turned back to the stallion. He was swaying on his hooves, adrenaline spent, exhaustion setting in now that his mission was complete. "Your turn, brave boy," Elena said gently, moving toward him with her medical gear on kit. "You've done your job," Elena whispered. gently applying antiseptic to the stallion's wounds. Now let us do ours. But even as she worked, the most haunting questions lingered in the canyon air. Who was this baby? How had she ended up alone in such a remote and unforgiving place? And how had a wild stallion become her guardian angel? The answers would prove even more astonishing than the rescue itself. While Dr. Mitchell and his team stabilized the infant aboard the helicopter, preparing for the flight to Denver Children's Hospital, Sheriff's Deputy Maria Santos began an investigation that would soon captivate the nation. The child had no identification, no car seat, no diaper bag, no clues of any kind pointing to how she'd arrived in one of Colorado's most isolated canyons. "Dr. Rodriguez," Deputy Santos called as she approached Elena, who was now carefully bandaging the stallion's shoulder. "We've combed through all missing persons reports from the past week. No babies matching this one's description have been reported missing." Elena glanced up, her hands steady as the great horse stood motionless beneath her care, accepting her, trusting her, just as he had when she'd approached the baby. "That doesn't make sense," she said slowly. "A 6-month-old doesn't just end up in the wilderness. Someone had to put her here." "There's more," Santos added. "We found fresh tire tracks about a quarter-mile from here, near the old mining road. They're no more than 2 days old." The implication struck Elena like a blow to the chest. "You think someone abandoned her?" "Deliberately," the deputy confirmed, her voice grim. "We're searching the surrounding area for more evidence. But so far, just the tire tracks and the baby." A rush of anger surged through Elena. The thought that someone had left a helpless infant to die alone in the wild made her stomach twist. But when she looked at the stallion, standing calmly now as Sarah gently cleaned another wound, her fury gave way to awe. This wild creature had done what no human had: stayed with the child, protected her, refused to let her die. The helicopter rose into the air, blades thundering as it disappeared over the canyon rim. Elena watched it go, carrying the baby toward safety. Then she turned back to the one who had made it all possible. "His wounds are deep but clean," Sarah reported. "The biggest risk now is infection. But if we can get him to the ranch, he has a good chance." "If," Elena echoed. Marcus stepped beside her. "Elena, he's a wild Mustang. Even if we heal him, he doesn't belong in captivity. We can't just throw him in a trailer and take him to a rescue facility." Elena looked at the stallion, who was staring at the sky where the helicopter had vanished, his expression raw and unsettled. There was something almost mournful in his posture, as if he knew the baby was gone, but couldn't bear it. "Maybe we can't bring him to the ranch," Elena said slowly, "but we can bring the ranch to him." Over the next several hours, her team transformed Copper Canyon into an impromptu field hospital. They erected a portable shelter, set up medical monitoring equipment, and began treating the stallion on site. It was a first-of-its-kind operation, an entire veterinary station, built for a single horse deep in the wilderness. But Elena refused to leave him. Not after what he'd done. The stallion accepted their presence. He ate the high-nutrient feed they provided. He allowed Sarah and Marcus to clean and rebandage his wounds. He stood calmly beneath the shelter. But his eyes never stopped searching the sky, always watching, always waiting. 3 days later, Deputy Santos returned to the canyon with news that would complete the picture. "We found her," she said, "the baby's mother. Jessica Martinez, 19 years old, from Denver. She was arrested trying to cross the border into Mexico." Elena's heart clenched. She abandoned her own child. "It's complicated," Santos replied. "She was involved with a drug dealer. He threatened to kill both her and the baby if she didn't cooperate. She panicked, took the baby, and drove out here. Thought she was protecting her daughter by leaving her where no one would look. She left a 6-month-old baby in the wilderness," Sarah said, her voice sharp with disbelief. "She told us she planned to come back," Santos said quietly. "She thought she could hide the baby for a few hours while she found help. She didn't understand how dangerous this place is. She didn't know how long she'd be gone." Elena shook her head, struggling to process it. She could have gone to the police, to a shelter. There were other options. Fear makes people do irrational things, Santos said. What matters now is the baby is safe, and the mother is finally getting help. As the investigation wrapped up and media attention surged, Elena found herself spending more and more time with the recovering stallion. The world now knew him as the guardian of Copper Canyon, a legend in the making. Reporters camped out at the canyon's edge, desperate for a glimpse or a photo. But Elena ignored the noise. What mattered to her were the quiet hours spent beside him, watching as he continued to scan the horizon, his ears flicking toward every distant sound. He had bonded with that baby in a way that defied explanation, a bond that crossed the divide between species, instincts, and reason. And Elena found herself wondering, would he ever understand that his job was finished? The answer came in the most unexpected way. 2 weeks after the rescue, Elena's phone. It was Dr. Mitchell calling from Denver Children's Hospital with news that sounded too strange to believe. "Dr. Rodriguez, I need to ask you something that's going to sound crazy," he began. Elena's heart skipped. "What is that baby, Isabella Martinez? She's healthy, she's been thriving. But something unusual is happening." Elena felt her chest tighten. "What kind of unusual?" "She won't stop crying unless we play recordings of horse sounds," Dr. Mitchell explained. "Not lullabies, not white noise, not her foster mother's voice. Only horses, knickers, whinnies, soft neighing. It's the only thing that calms her." Elena turned her gaze toward the canyon ridge, where the stallion stood outlined against the sky, ever watchful. "She bonded with him," Elena whispered. "In those hours, maybe days together, his presence became her safety, her comfort. She learned his voice before she knew anything else." "There's more," Dr. Mitchell continued. "Child Services is working with her mother, Jessica. She's in a rehabilitation program now. They're giving her a chance to get clean, to rebuild, and eventually, maybe, to regain custody. But Isabella, she's not doing well in foster care. She's not making eye contact, not sleeping properly. She cries most of the day." An idea began forming in Elena's mind, wild, unthinkable, but it refused to let go. "Dr. Mitchell, what would happen if Isabella could be reunited with the stallion, just for a little while?" There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Elena, that would be highly irregular," he said cautiously. "We're talking about bringing an infant back into contact with a wild animal. A wild animal who already proved he would die to protect her." Elena replied gently. "What if he isn't just her rescuer? What if he's the key to her recovery?" What followed was a whirlwind of conference calls, heated debates, ethical reviews, and urgent consultations. Hospital administrators, social workers, equine behaviorists, legal experts, even a family court judge. There was no precedent, none. But the circumstances were so extraordinary, so deeply human, that policy gave way to possibility. An agreement was reached. Isabella would return to Copper Canyon for a supervised reunion. The site would be secure. The stallion would be enclosed, but visible. Medical and veterinary teams would be present. Every precaution would be taken. The morning of the reunion, Elena's hands trembled as she set the stage. Every detail had been triple-checked. Fencing, medical equipment, security teams. The stallion waited in a specially prepared corral, unaware of what was coming, but visibly restless. And then, the distant hum of rotor blades echoed across the canyon. The helicopter touched down in a flurry of wind and dust. Dr. Mitchell stepped out, carrying Isabella in his arms. The moment the stallion saw them, he lifted his head and let out a sound unlike anything Elena had ever heard. Part whinny, part song. Pure recognition and joy. Inside the helicopter, Isabella had been fussing. But the instant she heard that sound, she quieted. Her head turned, she cooed softly. Then, with unmistakable intent, she reached her tiny arms toward the fence where the stallion stood. "This is incredible," Dr. Mitchell murmured. "Her heart rate stabilizing. Her cortisol levels are dropping in real time." Elena moved slowly toward the stallion, whose massive body trembled, not with fear, but with something that felt very much like anticipation. "Hello, beautiful boy," she whispered. "Your baby came back to see you." The stallion lowered his head, stretching his neck until his velvety muzzle hovered inches from the baby's outstretched hand. As her fingers brushed his nose, he let out the softest, gentlest nicker Elena had ever heard, like wind through tall grass. For the next hour they remained like that, the baby giggling and babbling, the stallion answering with soft sounds of his own, neither understanding the language of the other, yet somehow understanding everything. "She's not just happy," Dr. Mitchell reported. "She's thriving. Her stress hormones are dropping. Her heart rate is perfect. Her appetite has improved just from being near him." As the sun began to slide behind the canyon walls, casting long golden shadows, Elena realized they were witnessing something that went far beyond a miraculous rescue. This was a moment that could redefine science's understanding of interspecies connection. It was no longer just a story of survival. It was a story of healing, of a bond that crossed boundaries thought to be absolute. But as dusk deepened and shadows stretched across Copper Canyon, a difficult truth loomed. The reunion had to end. Isabella needed human care, and the stallion belonged to the wild. There was no roadmap for what came next. As Dr. Mitchell gently cradled Isabella and turned toward the waiting helicopter, the stallion's reaction was immediate and heartbreaking. He began to pace the enclosure, his hooves stirring dust as he released a series of distressed cries, louder, more desperate with each passing second. And then, for the first time since her return, Isabella cried. Loud, wrenching sobs erupted from her tiny chest, her arms stretching desperately toward her guardian. The connection between them, so clear and powerful, had become too strong to ignore. "This isn't going to work," Dr. Mitchell said quietly, watching both horse and child suffer. Separating them is causing severe emotional stress. To both of them, Elena's eyes met the stallion's. There was intelligence there, pain, and something else, something she could only describe as love. "What if we don't separate them?" she asked. "Elena, that's impossible," Deputy Santos objected gently. "We can't leave a baby in the wilderness with a wild horse. And we can't bring a wild stallion into a city," Dr. Mitchell added. "Even if he's calm now, he's still untamed." But Elena was already thinking beyond the obvious. What if we build a bridge between both worlds? Over the next few hours, she made the most important calls of her life. She reached out to the Bureau of Land Management, the state wildlife department, and several high-profile donors who had been captivated by Isabella's story. By morning, a bold and unprecedented plan was in motion. A section of Copper Canyon would be designated a special wildlife preserve. Wild Heart Rescue would take permanent custody of the stallion under a therapeutic animal program. A small, secure facility would be constructed nearby, allowing Isabella to visit regularly under medical supervision. But perhaps the most astonishing part of the plan involved Jessica Martinez. After completing a rigorous rehabilitation program, securing employment and proving her deep desire to be a mother again, Jessica had a tearful meeting with Elena. "I want to be part of this," she said. "That horse saved my daughter when I couldn't. If Isabella needs him to grow up happy and strong, then I need to be part of that world too." 6 months later, Copper Canyon had transformed into something the world had never seen before, a living sanctuary where the line between wild and domestic blurred into harmony. A cozy cabin overlooked the canyon floor, home to Jessica and Isabella, who had become caretakers of the preserve. The stallion, now officially named Thunder, thanks to Isabella's baby Babel, had a wide, open range of protected land. But he rarely roamed far. His world, too, had found its center in that tiny child. Elena visited often, checking in on both horse and child. What she observed amazed her. Isabella was thriving, exceeding milestones, showing emotional sensitivity, and an almost instinctual understanding of animal behavior far beyond her age. "She's teaching me as much as I'm teaching her," Jessica told Elena during one visit. Yesterday she was fussing. Thunder came. To the fence made this soft sound, and she immediately crawled to him and calmed down. It's like they have their own language. Dr. Mitchell had become a regular visitor as well, documenting what he now referred to as the thunder effect. He noted improvements in Isabella's cognitive development, emotional regulation, and physical health, improvements directly linked to her bond with the stallion. We're seeing neurological development patterns we've never observed before, Dr. Mitchell told a stunned audience at a pediatric conference. This child's brain is showing enhanced capacity for empathy, sensory regulation, and nonverbal communication. We may be witnessing a new frontier in child development, one born not from technology, but from an ancient sacred connection between human and animal, communication, and emotional intelligence. The implications for therapeutic animal programs are staggering. Thunder, meanwhile, had become a legend. Wildlife photographers from across the globe traveled to Copper Canyon, hoping to capture the stallion who had redefined humanity's understanding of animal consciousness and compassion. But Thunder paid no attention to the fame. His entire world remained centered on one small girl. On Isabella's second birthday, Elena stood at the edge of the pasture, hands resting on the fence as she watched the toddler giggle and play in the tall grass. Thunder grazed a few yards away, his every movement calm, calculated, and watchful. His eyes never left her. "Do you think he understands what he did?" Jessica asked quietly, stepping beside Elena. They watched as Isabella toddled over and wrapped her tiny arms around Thunder's massive front leg. Instantly, the stallion lowered his head and nuzzled her, his breath stirring her hair like a breeze, his eyes soft with something no textbook could define. "I think he understands perfectly," Elena replied. "He found his purpose that day, in the canyon. And it had nothing to do with being wild or free. It had everything to do with love." As the sun dipped low, casting golden rays across Copper Canyon, Elena took in the moment. The child, the stallion, the second chance. What had begun as a desperate rescue had transformed into a living testament of something far greater, a bond that transcended instinct, biology, and logic. Isabella giggled as Thunder gently blew air through her curls. The sound echoed like music across the canyon, a melody of joy, of connection, of home. This was no longer just a story about survival. It was about chosen family, about love that crosses every boundary, species, circumstance, expectation, and chooses to stay. Thunder and Isabella's journey taught the world that sometimes the strongest families aren't born. They're formed in the crucible of crisis, held together by sacrifice, loyalty, and unconditional love. That true guardianship doesn't come from biology, but from the courage to protect what is precious. And this incredible story reminds us, love knows no boundaries. Not of blood, not of species, not of what society says is possible. Thunder's devotion to Isabella and her joyful trust in him redefined what it means to care for another being with your whole heart. He didn't just save her life that day in the canyon. He gave her something far more enduring. He gave her family. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of animal heroism, unexpected families, and the bonds that defy explanation. Leave a like if Thunder and Isabella's journey inspired you, and share this story with someone who needs to remember, families come in all shapes and sizes. Love is the most powerful force in the universe, and sometimes miracles begin with a single unbreakable bond. What would you do if you discovered an animal protecting something precious? How far would you go to keep a family together, even if that family defied every rule? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to hit that notification bell for more stories that prove love conquers all.